everybody. Welcome to our election special for the TraderMerlin show. My name is Linus, and this is Billy from Duck Dynasty. How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing good.
I'm feeling like we should go hunting today. Oh, we thought we'd have a little bit of fun with this election because obviously, it's important we go out and we vote today. But unfortunately, out of 300+ million people,
right,
these are the two we have to choose from. So that said, I encourage everybody to go out there and vote. I did my civic duty. Larry's got the sticker as well.
You know, if I can say something real quick, if you don't go out and vote, don't start complaining because you deserve it.
Yeah,
there you go, right?
Even though it might not be the way that you want, hopefully at the end of this, regardless of which side of the aisle ends up winning, we can look at each other as friends and say, all right, well, we'll make it through it just like we have every other president that's ever been. So I thought we'd do something kind of like we did a few weeks ago, where we talked about some of the high points for the election side of things, and I wanted to make sure that it's live as well, so I'll be watching the chats off to the side. But if you have anything specific you want us to cover, a specific sector, let us know. Larry and I will check that out as well.
Yep.
All right, so Larry, you voted. Who'd you vote for and why? I'm totally kidding. I don't care who you voted for. Right now we've got over 100 million people have sent in their ballots already, which you're saying I think was 75% of all that we had for 2016. So we're on pace to have a much greater election result, at least number attendance-wise. What's your take on the election so far?
I think it's tough to call because, again, we saw this 4 years ago that a lot of people started to predict. And hopefully this time people learn from that 4 years ago. They're going to go out, they're going to vote, keep voting until those polls close because we don't know how this is going to turn out. And again, some states have some time too. Unless it's a landslide or it's really clear who the winner would be, it could go on for a couple weeks
as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The challenge with all of this, guys, is obviously the uncertainty out there. And I think Larry and I have both experienced this not only in our personal trading, but also in the students that we've coached over the years have been the assumption about what's going to happen. I've been hearing from a lot of people, they're predicting a landslide victory for Biden. And then I'm hearing from other people, well, Trump's dominating here and there. I think the most important thing for us all to do right now is forget about all of that stuff, at least with regards to your trading, because you could get blindsided left and right. That said, I did go home into the close with one futures contract short just to have a little bit of fun on the south side here if it does come to fruition. But today we had a really big upside move. I think that was against what almost everybody was expecting, right? Going into election, usually a lot of pessimism. People aren't really sure which way it's going to go. Usually get a little bit of sell-off. We did not see that today.
Well, it could just mean the larger the rise, the bigger the fall. It's like they're just resetting. So I think the realistic look at this right now is going to be what's going to happen, and more importantly, what we're hoping for is what's going to happen tomorrow just with us. I mean, ultimately, what's really kind of troubled me, and we were talking about this before the show started, is last night, I saw a lot of media outlets talking about almost insinuating there are going to be riots.
Yeah.
So to me, again, and I've had this issue where I'm all about freedom of speech, all about freedom of the press, but where's that responsibility where now they're going out and trying to agitate people?
Right.
And if you went by a supermarket last night, good luck.
Yeah.
Because it was getting crazy, and what's going to happen, that today was probably crazier than yesterday, and so people are starting to expect the worst. Why? Because the media is telling you to expect the worst.
I've loaded up on toilet paper, so if anybody needs, maybe we'll be auctioning off toilet paper on TraderMerlin show going forward.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I'm going to ask you, what do you think the biggest commodity is going to be for the rest of 2020 into 2021? It's not going to be Bitcoin, because I know that's where you're going to go. Right?
Alcohol?
No, not going to be alcohol, right? What do you think it's going to be? Not marijuana.
So we're not going to our Vice Index?
No.
I was going to say toilet paper.
Well, you would have guessed right, because this is going to be the biggest commodity that we're going to have in the rest of the year. And by the way,
this is two-ply sharp.
Gold.
This is the good stuff.
Gold, Mr. Bond.
It's funny. We look at shares of stocks and you think all stocks are the same. Or one share of Dell is the same as the next. Toilet paper, though, my friends, is very different.
Mr. Whipple.
Hey, the one ply you get in college campus bathrooms compared to the two-ply fluffy Charmin.
That's
totally
right.
different ballgame. All right. We got 2 packs of TV from Costco. I think people are setting themselves up for it.
I'm telling you, it's going to get crazy.
The other thing that was really interesting, and I agree with Larry, I think it's kind of scary out there. I have a friend on the East Coast, and she's worried that there's going to be riots in her town. She's on the first floor. She's like, I'm worried they're going to... Relax. I think we'll all be okay. What will probably happen is just, how do I say this in a politically correct way, general stupidity where, I'm okay with protest, even rioting to an extent if it's done in the right manner, but smashing business windows just so you can get in there and steal some furniture or some clothes or whatever. That's just idiocracy. And unfortunately, I think that will happen regardless of who wins, Trump or Biden. You'll probably have some civil unrest. You're seeing a lot of buildings boarded up. I did see a few friends commenting that they drove by sporting goods stores here in Southern California and line out the door, not for tennis shoes, not for sleeping bags, not for baseball bats, but for ammunition, which is equally as frightening.
And they closed Beverly Hills down in California. I mean, they've literally closed.
What a loss. Well, all the snobs got to stay
I'm just saying it's interesting. Like, they closed off Rodeo Drive. It's like, how will they get their Starbucks?
Oh my gosh, I can't get Prada until Monday. All right, let's look at some of the major areas that are going to be challenging for us. Obviously, there's going to be uncertainty in the markets, regardless of who wins. We know right now there's tremendous uncertainty because which ballot do you trust? Are we going to have hanging Chad? Come on, Florida, step it up this year. Come up with something new.
True.
It's going to go back and forth, and we could hypothesize and say, well, Trump's going to maintain presidency, or Biden will take over the presidency. Either way, there will be some uncertainty and there'll be a tremendous amount of volatility. What we do know is there are three primary areas that will most likely be impacted the most, and I think that'll give us some clues as to where the markets may go.
Okay.
The first one, of course, is going to be the one that scares everybody: taxes. All right, looking at the propositions or how they're positioning themselves. Obviously, Trump is going to do whatever he can to keep taxes very low. That's one of the Republican principles. But then the Democrats are already said, hey, we're going to raise taxes from 21 to 28% on corporations. And all of a sudden, the average person's freaking out about this.
Totally.
But they probably don't need to freak out as much. Why?
Well, I think, again, we always have this idea that as soon as prices start to go up, they're going to pass it down to us. This is pretty much the talk track to most novices that don't understand how the markets work, where they're saying, oh, they're raising interest rates. That means that it's going to pass on to us, and immediately we're going to start to see higher mortgage rates. We're seeing more at the pump. We're seeing more at the markets. Not necessarily. I mean, at this point, still got to take into consideration 28% is not that high when you look at the rest of the world right now.
The global community is much, much higher
than that.
Right,
but I understand that there are companies right now, and they're kind of figuring out how they're going to kickstart their businesses back up, and now all of a sudden you're going to have to deal with taxes. And I can go a step further in the sense that what we're really looking for right now is going to be the idea that we've got taxes going into the fact of, think about it, let's step further. You've got Uber. Yep. In some states right now, they're trying to push to become employees. And
I'm going to actually do my only political push right now. This is the only political push I'm going to do. Get out there and vote yes on 22, because I do not want to lose my Uber. You know how important Uber is? If we didn't have Uber and Lyft and these types of companies, I assure you, the drunk driving accidents, fatalities, and injuries would be colossally higher. Vote yes on 22. Sorry, that's all I'm saying.
Well, you messed out the biggest one. DoorDash, man.
DoorDash, right?
They're behind it too. You can't be getting your snack box at midnight anymore from Taco Bell.
That would be you, sir.
Hey, you're the guy always pumping the marijuana stocks, so I'm just saying.
I'm high on marijuana stocks, that's for sure. We'll talk about that as well, because
that
will probably be a huge beneficiary here later on.
Right.
All right, so I totally cut you off and interrupted your train of thought.
No, I'm just saying, I think with taxes, we have to realize that, there's going to be some pain here. It depends on the businesses. I mean, if they're a large business right now with very deep free cash flow, then they should be paying more in taxes. If it's a small type of thing, we have to kind of see what goes on. But, the first thing they're going to start saying is, well, we're going to leave the country, we're going to do this. Wait and see what's going to happen. We don't know. And just as politicians have said before, we're going to lower taxes, there'll be more money in your pocket. That always hasn't, come out to be the way they expected it either.
We could certainly make the point that because of the repatriation of capital and the tax breaks down to 21% for corporations, that it has seriously vaulted the markets. And that probably is significantly due to share buybacks of companies. And we've seen that happen significantly over the past few years as share prices are near all-time highs. And of course, anyone who's got a 401k or IRA is loving this, right? Because your long-term investments are going to go up. If those tax rates do go back up to, let's say, 28%, which is still not that high compared to some other countries around the world, that may feel a little bit of a pinch for corporations. Now, let's be honest. If I am Kimberly Clark selling Larry's 2-ply toilet paper here, this is golden, right? This is an expensive piece.
Gold, Mr.
What a prop for the show. If I'm Kimberly Clark and I'm selling this, and you're going to now tax me at 28% versus 21%, my bottom line, my shareholders
Your
are
bottom?
going to feel, my bottom line, it's going to be irritated, is going to feel a pinch. Well, that did, the innuendos here just off the charts.
Wipe it off, man.
Don't shake it. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep my shareholders happy, because if it's 28%, my bottom line, here we go again, is going to really be suffering. So what I'm probably going to do, I'm just going to pass it on to you. So that increase in taxation most likely will be passed on to the end consumer, which results in one of these terrible, foul, disgusting words that you don't like to use in public. It starts with an I. Inflation could potentially be an issue from that tax bump there. But bottom line is, it's really going to impact us as individual investors from going 21 to 28. Not yet.
Right.
Down the road, maybe, if those tax hikes are passed on to us.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the average consumer? Because the average consumer historically is going to, you want lower personal income taxes, you vote Republican, right? Because that's what the party usually stands behind. In this case, the Democratic Party is also saying, well, we are going to raise taxes, but it's not going to be on everybody.
Right.
It's going to be on a select group over $400,000 worth of net income. So that shouldn't impact the average voter. I'm sure if you're Bill Gates, if you're Warren Buffett, you're some big guys like that who are making billions, like, ooh, okay, well, I don't want this to happen, but...
Well, not necessarily. Warren Buffett's come out and publicly said, look, if they raise the tax rate on us, then I have to pay it. But right now he's saying I don't have to pay it, and so we probably should be paying it, but once that gets written, I'll make the payments. So, but not everybody will do that. They'll figure out more creative ways of hiding it, probably. So.
There usually is, right? There's always some creative shenanigans that go on there. So taxes will be probably the main issue I think most of us are focused on, or at least interested in. It's not the one that's steering my decision in the election, but I think it is one for many people. I watched, unfortunately, which I don't like to do this, but I made the mistake of watching CNN and different news outlets, and they were interviewing people on the streets, like, why did you vote for this particular person? And what
because of this, man. Because of this. I want this.
What came up was healthcare and taxes, which brings us to our second one, which is healthcare. Now, there isn't any, I don't believe that there is a real clear way that you could say healthcare is going to go definitively up or definitively down based on who wins, because there's just too much uncertainty behind the sector.
Yeah, and the other thing that we talked about, and you and I always mention, is it's not just the White House. Remember, this election is much, much more. You've got Congress and what's going to happen in the Senate and what's going to happen in the House, and that's going to impact how quickly they can make those changes, because again, if we find that we're in gridlock, things might not happen that quickly.
Yeah. The main focus that you heard in the healthcare, obviously there's going to be, is it Obamacare, is it the Affordable Care Act, what ends up happening there? And that's going to create a tremendous amount of volatility, which for us guys, as traders and investors, it's great. I think more so for traders, there's going to be tremendous swings and opportunity in that healthcare sector. The industry that has been booming and may actually stop booming and feel a pinch here is going to be biotechs and pharmaceuticals, because both parties, Democrats and Republicans, have been saying how they're frustrated with the skyrocketing cost of drugs, and they're going to do what they can to lower those costs. Of course, that could impact companies like Pfizer or Biogen. These types of firms out there could face a pinch.
Well, you also have the other side of the coin, which has not been talked about much, which is, you heard Purdue. Purdue recently...
University?
No, Purdue
Yes,
pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah, the opioids.
Opioids, the new candy. Yeah. And so ultimately at this point, that's going to be an issue. And so what's going to happen with the whole pharmaceutical area in that respect, in terms of, which party is going to continue to either support or really go after those companies, because you do have issues. People are dying from what's going on out there, and it's not really been talked about at all during the entire election.
Martin Shkreli, who are you voting for? Oh, I'm sorry, you're in prison for hiking up drug costs. Yeah, good for you, you SOB. Let's look at the next one, which is going to be trade. Now, trade before the election, actually not even before the election. In 2016, 17, 18, maybe even 19, trade was the talk du jour. It's like, oh, hello, have a side of trade talk with your negotiations. And it was ugly. It didn't really, I don't see any real firm resolution there, but boy, it's gone the way of the dodo, hasn't it? I haven't heard squat in regards to trade talk.
No, I think what's happening right now is the Chinese are waiting. They're waiting to see what happens with the election right now. And it's very, very fascinating, because if you go to different parts of the world, they're very divided in terms of who they want to continue to be president. It's very interesting right now. And so I think that that's going to be something that will definitely be revisited. And they're hoping that, if the Democrats take the office, the White House, then they'll be a little bit more lax on what the current administration administration has been doing. And, we're not even talking about North Korea and the other type of things like Iran. A lot of different things going on in the world right now. And I think that's going to either continue to be more of the same, or if the current administration continues, what's their plan? And that hasn't been really addressed much.
It hasn't. And I think the challenge here, this is to me probably the trickiest. Healthcare is the most unknown.
Right.
But there are so many different pieces with regards to trade. So, for example, we could look at the Donald Trump current administration approach to trade, which has been somewhat authoritarian, which has been, I'm calling the shots, what I say goes, I don't really care what anybody else says, screw you World Trade Organization, screw you NAFTA, screw you anything else, I don't care, I'll do what I want, versus you go to the previous administration, or most likely what Biden will do will be to work with World Trade Organizations and different entities to maybe get to the same, we won't get to the same point that Trump did in his negotiations, but it will be much more accommodative, much more peaceful. And the question I have is, in the short term, that might ease trade tensions, trade could go up, and things start to get a little bit better. Now, of course, the hard line that Trump is drawing is probably very good for the long term, which he'll be long out of office by the time that actually takes big economic impact. And I don't know which way it's going to go there. The way that I was raised, my parents were always more be civil, be diplomatic, work together to get things done. I don't know which approach that's going to be, and we'll see who gets elected. If Biden does get elected, I think you will see a much more diplomatic approach, which will probably relieve some of the tariffs and taxes. If Trump continues, it'll probably be straight hardline too, which means we'll have a lot of uncertainty and hopefully some good at the end of it all. Yeah,
it's very possible, and I think you're also going to see just the approaches. If they go more diplomatic, we might get slower change again. If it goes a little bit the way it's been going, we're getting immediate kind of reactions. So I think that's differences in their leadership style as well.
Yep. All right, let's see. What else did I have on here? I had one, we're going to save that one for later.
Okay.
Let's talk about some specific areas that I think, if you guys are looking from a long-term investment perspective, that might be of interest. And you were joking earlier about the cannabis thing, but in all seriousness, if we get a different perspective from the administration, normally Republicans are against drugs. They're going to be more against the cannabis industry. We have seen them back down a little bit recently with regards to cannabis, but we know that the Democrats, most likely being a little bit more liberal in their views, are going to most likely be more open-minded there. And that could usher in a boom for the cannabis industry, specifically if we get legalization on cannabis on a federal level. For those that don't know, right now, it is illegal for growers of cannabis in the United States to distribute internationally. If that barrier is removed, then all of a sudden, this could be not only a major boom for the share prices because of greater distribution, but think of all the tax revenue that could be collected. I mean, this is one thing that you look at and go, wow, this is a win-win for the U.S. It's just, can we get over that hurdle of keeping this weed illegal on a federal level? I think that's probably one of the first things to drop.
Again, remember that states can always decide if they want to have a more stringent policy on it. That's fine. But you got to remember that the only rule that is out there is that the state constitution cannot go ahead and conflict the U.S. Constitution. So whatever they wind up doing, it's going to be a matter of time. But I want to also focus, it's not just on the marijuana itself. Think of all the other industries that will benefit from that as a result of that being legalized. Like the first one that comes to mind is going to be Philip Morris. Philip Morris right now, is basically, in a great position, to be able to go out there, and they could just change a couple of their packaging, put a leaf on it instead of the cowboy, and they're set to go.
And they've been buying a lot of the vape, companies that are making the liquids for delivery of THC and CBDs. Here is, I'm going to have Gary bring up the MJ chart here just because I think it's interesting. We, back in April, May of this year, guys, you remember people were asking me what thoughts are. I said, I'm bullish. I'm long-term bullish on the cannabis industry. We rallied all the way up to 15, and then it's just been in this kind of slow sell-off. It has not been very good. We have seen over the past few days, I'll zoom in a little bit there, a nice pop up in the cannabis market. It's gone from the ETF MJ, which is what I'm using as the measurement there, was down at about 1050. Now it's up at about 1165 in just 3 days. That's a pretty nice pop. But what's noteworthy here is look at the volume. All right, so it's not just, it's drifting up. It's drifting up on higher volume, meaning that the demand is starting to pick up. People are buying into that. I don't know, I can't say definitively if this is telegraphing a win, but it certainly is showing a bit more optimism over the past few days with regards to the cannabis industry.
Well, I know a couple of states, I can't remember the one off the top of my head, I want to say Michigan, had it on their ballot to make it legal recreationally. So a lot of states now are starting to consider the recreational use as well as the recreational opportunities, like you mentioned, with taxes and other things, to kind of kickstart the economy. And so it'll be very interesting to kind of see how this plays out in the next few years, in that, obviously we saw how prohibition worked out.
Yeah, right.
It really kind of tanked the whole industry, small businesses, and then they wound up bringing it back anyway because it just was a failed proposition. But if you get enough states that will ratify this, there's no reason why. And all of a sudden, Colorado, we haven't had an influx of murders. We haven't had all these things that Reefer Madness in the 30s told us we'd be living as a result of it. And I think it's just, to me, how is that any different than caffeine, from alcohol, from cigarettes, anything else that basically does it? But there's money involved here. And the more money that states can generate now, it could help a lot of causes, especially infrastructure. And that might offset the taxes that they need.
I got to read one here just because sometimes people say some stuff that I just have to get there. He says, healthcare, Joseph says, healthcare will benefit because people will get sick from smoking pot. Quite the contrary, Joseph. If you look at the facts, figures, and numbers, it's actually much better. From a medicinal perspective, you are having people who are smoking pot. When you say smoking pot, it really makes it almost sound like you're watching Reefer Madness. But if you're using cannabis products, there is tremendous medical research showing the benefits for it for a lot of different things. And unfortunately, or actually very fortunately, what it's doing is it is taking away market share from big pharma, because so many big pharmas want to get you hooked on pills, and you get stuck on those pills forever and ever and ever, whereas you could be using something like cannabis to help some of those ailments, and the list goes on and on and on. If your argument is that it's the carcinogens in it, you don't understand the cannabis industry that well. The health industry actually would benefit from cannabis because it's going to be helped in so many different areas, whether it's carcinogen from smoking. If your issue is carcinogens, then there's edibles. Carcinogens are now out the window.
I was going to say edibles compared to, smokers chewing gum.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I agree with that. I think it was big, or Tom said here, I'd rather contend with stoned drivers than drunk drivers. Yeah. Would you rather get hit by someone driving 65 miles an hour, just completely drunk off Jack Daniels, or some guy who's so high he's doing 15 miles an hour on the freeway? That's the guy I want to run into.
Was that you?
All right, sorry. We don't make it a drug show here. But I think that's one of the major areas, at least from my perspective, and I'm happy to read in chat here what areas you think might benefit. I saw healthcare come up here. Chris, this is great. He says, Pepsi will soar, everyone gets the munchies. Now, you're probably right there. That's probably a true one.
And let's face it, the fast food industry is not doing it.
Yeah.
The fast food industry, I mean, if you ever watch like the Jack in the Box commercials, you see where they're going with stuff. So look, there is a market for this. I think there's just a matter of time and everyone getting comfortable with it. And I got to presume through the entire COVID period now, there's been a lot of research, and states have made it an essential business. So that's telling you something.
Yep. All right, so obviously I think cannabis is one. Is there any specific areas you think? I mean, you were talking about alternative energy the other day. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it all depends. Now, it's funny because, you've heard Biden say, I will not stop fracking, right? And then you have Trump saying about Pennsylvania that, he's going to kill the fracking industry. Right. So it's like, what are they actually going to be doing? Like we talked about, I think if it's a Democratic White House, they're going to pursue more climate change initiatives. They're going to look to want to get off traditional, oils and fossil fuels. We have a voter here.
We have a guest speaker over here. Sorry, guys. I brought the dog onto the set today.
Hello, Bobby.
All right, go lay down. Come on.
So I think you're going to see that actually start to happen, where it's just going to change the way that we're looking at different things right now. And I think we're just in a brand new era of, this has been a big pivot year that I would actually compare to maybe 1968. I mean, it feels very much like that time, even though I was a young kid then. You look back at some of the newsreels, and they were having riots and all the same type of issues going on, and they survived that, and we'll survive this as well, and things will change.
Let's see. There was another one. Where was it? One? Naum. I like this one actually. It says, "Can't pharma make a synthetic pill called THC?" Okay, now this is getting deep into chemical composition, but I want to just. When I was much younger, a good friend of mine in Northern California was into holistic medicines, and lavender. Lavender as a plant is one of the most powerful healing plants on the planet. Why? Because there's certain chemical properties within lavender that you can, you put it on a wound, and that chemical composition helps heal that wound. what happens in the human body is your body will start to build up a tolerance to a specific chemical composition if it's one definitive point of a composition. Lavender has so many different variations of that compound that your body doesn't build immunity to it. No pharmaceutical company has been able to replicate a specific drug that has the full spectrum of effects of something like lavender. So when you look at THC, I think it's similar. There are synthetic THCs out there, but I think that the health benefits of it, and CBDs, that's all we talk about CBDs as well, the health benefit of it is the full spectrum of the chemical, of the drug, as opposed to a pharmaceutical with one specific point. And look, there are targeted THC compounds made by pharmaceuticals, but your best bet is to go for the cheaper natural version anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's go to this one.
Okay.
Raj says banks. We can talk about banks real quick. For those that might not remember, we did a show a couple days ago with Colin Teddards of the Investor Channel, which is phenomenal. You guys check out his channel. And Colin and I broke down some of the bank numbers. Now, the earnings season that started showed that most of the banks did tremendously well, but have been selling off almost ever since those earnings announcements just a couple of weeks ago. So do you have any thoughts on how the banking sector might be impacted?
Well, again, I think it comes down to, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the banks have been incredibly flat the last several months. I mean, if we take a look at the chart, maybe you want to call...
Except the past 2 days.
Yeah, but no, it's still ranging. If you look at it, we're still kind of in this range right now, see? And it's been kind of going sideways and sideways, and I think a lot of this is just waiting to see again what might be happening in terms of regulations. The one thing that, again, no one's really been talking about are the three bubbles that we're kind of in right now. Mm-hmm. The fact that we had the inverted yield curve back in August, which we've been talking about now for, it's been over a year. We're in the precipice of a recession, and the question is, when's the crash coming? And then what is the bank's involvement? We got to remember that nobody went to prison in 2008. Think about that.
Well, hold on.
One guy.
Well, nobody, even the banks.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
If you're talking all of America, we did well this year.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, but if you think about the banks after what happened, and the same thing I think will happen when we start to see if anything comes out of the COVID thing, same things. But the bottom line, I think, is what is that going to mean for interest rates, inflation, like you were talking about, the taxes? That will indirectly affect banks. And, the other thing we're seeing is what are we not knowing about banks that are going to come out again? I think Wells Fargo, once again, did something a couple of weeks ago.
Let me bring up that chart. Bring up the chart of Wells Fargo, because Wells Fargo has been just on a death spiral. And guys, I'm just going to real quickly show you these. I'll have Gary bring up Wells Fargo here real quick. Here's Wells Fargo, and let's just look at it on a weekly. I think that paints a better picture. And I know we've already looked at this on the show the other day, but you can see it's just going down. It doesn't look like anything's going to save it. Now, Bank of America looking a little healthier. At least it's stabilized and has had a good week so far. You have Goldman Sachs, which is looking better. But
notice they all kind of look the same. Have you noticed that?
Sure. And then here's one I like the best would be J.P. Morgan. Now, I'm going to go out and say
something. Is it the best Yorkshire picture? Is that why you like it the best? It all looks the same.
It all looks the same. Well, I will say this. I do actually see, for the gentleman who asked specifically about banks, I definitely do see upside potential. Here's why. If you watch any of the shows we've done with Bill Addis or have taken Bill Addis' signature series, where I encourage you to do because it's just phenomenal content, great information, he points out that right now the Treasury is having to sell record number of bonds to raise the capital to fund our deficit, which is trillions and trillions and trillions. It's ridiculous how much our deficit has grown. So simple way the bonds work is as you're selling more and more and more of those bonds, if you have let's just say that I had 5 sellers of bonds and 5 buyers, right? Mm-hmm. For the same amount each.
Yep.
Price is going to go nowhere.
Right.
What we have right now is an equation where it used to be 5-5 and prices kind of went sideways, maybe a little bit up. Now you're looking at, I have 5 buyers and I got 100,000 sellers. It's just cratering the prices of bonds.
Right.
So in order to get more buyers in and make it attractive for the buyers of those bonds, which I have to do, I have to increase the yield that I am offering, which is why we've seen over the past few months, the yield curve went from inverted in August to now it's starting to get a little bit steeper. Right. The steeper that curve gets, that's more money for banks, because that means that banks can now lend out money to customers and make more profit on that. They're not going to make profit off a 3% mortgage for 30 years, but boy, you get them to 6 or 8 or 9, now they're talking. And that may be what's coming. So I think in the next 2 to 3 years, if you're a holder like that, I think banks might be a really good place to go.
Well, they're going to have to figure out how to keep making more money at this point. And so the one thing that's kind of the wild card, and you might want to talk about that, is the whole digital currency world,
Yep.
because I think we're going to see changes. I think, I'm still not convinced all of a sudden we have this bleep this year, and how do we have a coin shortage? So my friend said it, which I loved. He actually said it's from everybody throwing coins in the fountain to get through this year.
Hoping this year
Hoping this year would
end.
end.
If you guys believe there's a coin shortage, that is a bunch of bullshit. I mean, come on. There's no way there's a coin shortage. I mean, look, coins are expensive to make. They're messy. They take time to mint. They look great when you put them on a railroad track as a kid and smash those pennies. But it goes, and you're right. Kevin right here says Fed coin is coming, which will be controlled by the big banks, and the government, which will control our money and us. Yes, and I've done a special on this one in the past. I totally agree. I think that is what this has been a push towards a digital currency. We will have the Fed coin. I remember actually on Gary's Facebook page, what was it, 2 years ago? Gary's like, I see a federal coin coming by the end of the year. I was like, I think it'll be, give it a couple years, and I think we're right on track. I think like another 2 years, it will probably be fully implemented, a Fed coin. And my question is, how is this going to impact the banks? Because right now your money is at a bank, and the bank controls that ledger. This is saying it goes straight through the Fed, so why the hell do I need a bank anymore? That's an interesting one.
Whose face goes on the coin?
There's no coin. It's digital.
I'm joking.
But I'm frustrated because it sounds so good in theory from an efficiency, from a transaction.
Yeah.
But you guys, imagine how dangerous this is.
Yes.
If you have all, let's say you got $100,000 in your bank account and you run a stop sign and you didn't pay your speeding ticket or your stop sign ticket. They could hit a button and instantly freeze your money 100%.
Yes.
And there's nothing that I don't know, that to me is just way too much control over over my money. I don't know. It sounds great.
And it's interesting that this was originally created so that we would get away from this whole fiat currency model. And now it's just going to pull us in a completely different way. It's like just this, with the three, where are you going to hide the coin under the 3 cups?
Yeah.
And how we're going to end up.
Is it 3-card Monty? Is that what it's
3-card Monty or 3-cup Monty, depending upon if you're using cups or cards.
All right. I see Joe says New York City landlords are really suffering. Yeah, New York City's not looking very good. I mean, when all of a sudden COVID blew up like it did, New York got shut down. Certainly areas of California did as well, but we're a little more spread out. When you're a big centralized city like that, that can be a devastating impact there. That said, let me throw in one other thing here. If you're looking for investments, if you're looking for places to go, remember corporate income taxes under Biden would most likely go from 21 to 28%. So you're thinking, well, that's going to impact a lot of businesses. That could hurt the share price. Do you know who doesn't? Let's see, trivia question for any viewers out there. Which companies or entities do not pay corporate income taxes? Because, and you write it in the chat. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Because wouldn't it make sense if corporate income taxes are going to go up and could hurt a company that you invest in companies that don't pay corporate income taxes?
Right.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to let that one hang out there for a little bit and see what you guys think about that one.
Sure.
Let's see. I agree with Raj. Have to hold commodities. I think commodities would be a great spot in your portfolio, especially physical gold. Toilet paper is now going to be traded on the CME.
Move over, butter.
Move over,
toilet paper at $3,000 a roll today. Yes.
Shane says S-Corp cruise lines. I don't know about cruise lines. I think that cruise lines do pay. I think that they actually do pay corporate income taxes because it's a typical corporation.
But you know what's fascinating about the cruise line industry? This is my theory.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Okanola says Amazon. That's a good one. That's good because, okay, let me clarify that question. That's a great answer, and you could argue Trump hotels, right? Which companies are supposed to pay taxes according to the Internal Revenue Service? I'm not talking about companies which adjust and shuffle and manipulate their books so that they don't pay taxes. That's a totally different ballgame. So glad you guys pointed out there. The answer is REITs. Real estate investment trusts do not pay corporate income taxes. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thing to think about is maybe an area in a portfolio because not only are they not paying corporate income taxes, which means that they are not going to get hit as hard, but they're also, many of them are paying great dividends. So
just in time for the housing bubble.
Just in time for the housing bubble.
I'm just telling you, this is what the world's about. But I was going to say about the cruise ships. Check this out. I think they're going to become floating nursing homes. You're laughing.
Aren't they anyway? Is it just
no, but
people on cruises?
I know, but think
Sorry,
about it.
Cruises.
Like if I could be on a cruise the whole time and there would be like a doctor on the ship and I get food. So I'm saying there's a doctor on the ship and there's food constantly. I don't have to leave the ship.
Leisure Suit Larry Cruise Lines. Sign up, folks.
Move over, Disney.
Oh boy!
See, it's always fun when we do these shows.
And they actually just spiked. There was a pop in cruise ships because they were saying that they can now get back into business as long as they adhere to all these protocols. And I'm a fan. I love cruises.
How does the buffet work in a COVID environment?
Number 23, your buffet is ready. Number 23.
All right, 4 hours later, you can now go through the buffet line, right?
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. We had
Well, Amazon's interesting. I think the bigger thing, too, we talked about briefly, is going to be the trusts right now. This is what I always refer to them as. We've talked about it. The Amazons, the Googles, the Apples, they're getting too big. And I'm going to take my moment. Usually do. I'm going to take my moment.
I love when he's got his moment.
Why the hell does Apple think it could rid our childhood of Charlie Brown?
Oh.
Come on, this is ridiculous. It's like, do you understand that we now have to pay Apple that we can watch our childhood favorites? So think about it. What's next? The Grinch?
Oh, you're a mean one.
No.
Too soon? Was that?
I like that. See? No, but really, if you think about it, this is where we're going right now. The money and the greed factor is starting to permeate everything that we deal with. And so I'm just concerned right now that they're getting too big. And I think the same way, hopefully, we'll wake up.
Larry had no problem with Apple. They controlled phones, they had computers, they had cloud serving, they had music, and he had no issue with that. But you start taking away Charlie Brown's Christmas pumpkin, or Halloween pumpkin. What is it? What's the show? The Christmas Great Pumpkin Hunt? The Great Pumpkin Patch? Something like that for, I don't know. I'm from Sonoma County, too. You think I would know Charles Schultz. But you take away Charlie Brown, and that's the line in the sand that Larry can't
As
stand.
the Grinch would say, luck, suck. I'll leave it there.
So wait a minute. So my holiday decorations, and you guys might enjoy this. I used to put up all the lights around my house. I'm sure right now many of you are going, "Oh, great! I get to go fall from my eaves of my house and break my back trying to hang Christmas tree lights." Right? You're almost obligated to do it every year. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but I still hang up the lights because it's like I'm the guy in the neighborhood who doesn't have them up. Well, I got to beat the next door neighbor. So I found a great solution for this, guys.
Lay it on me.
And I don't know whether now Apple is going to make me take them down, but instead of hanging up like 30 different stringers of lights, I hang up one on the second story, and I only hang it up halfway. I made a plywood cutout of the Grinch, and the Grinch is pulling down my Christmas tree lights. So every year I've been adding, so I've got on the roof, I have the Grinch, I have Max the dog in the sleigh, and he's pulling down my lights. One string, mind you. And on the front lawn, I have Whoville with Cindy Lou Who, the tree, and all the stuff. So am I now going to have to take that down?
What you need to do is just say, brought to you by Apple. And then you're all
I'll make an Apple Christmas ornament.
Sponsored by Apple. And just put a picture of Steve Jobs like this. You know?
The Great Pumpkin, that's what it was called. Thanks, Thomas.
No, but the next one, Thanksgiving's coming and Christmas. No, they're going to take it all away.
Well, I'm sure you can watch it somewhere. You just have to go to Apple to watch it.
You know what it was? I got a rock for Halloween.
Pet rock coming back through.
That's right.
All right. So we talked about actually the last one we want to go into is clean energy. Yep. So I think the challenge here, guys, is when you look at the statements made by politicians and political parties, there's obviously the pieces that we can pull from Democrats and Republicans and say this is what these parties historically do, regardless of who the candidate is, and then you add on their special salt, which is going to be Trump's perspective and Biden's perspective, yep. And you look at both of those. My dog is whining at me over here. One of the things that's been very clear and vocal in this campaign for Biden has been clean energy. Now, I know I mentioned this probably on TraderMerlin show a few weeks ago and during the webinar, but I want to make sure you guys hear it as well. Gary, bring up the charts here so I can show you a couple. TAN, I can't remember all the different symbols I had up, but here is TAN. Just to put this in perspective, guys, this is a weekly time frame. And while TAN is a solar company, and I think we all agree that we'll probably see businesses start to become more solar, but the moves that have happened since those March lows on Invesco's exchange-traded fund TAN, T-A-N, this is a weekly basis. You can see that it bottomed out down here right around 21 bucks. It recently hit a high in just about 6 months of almost 80. That's a tremendous rise, and part of me feels like that's pricing in something. I feel like it's almost pricing in the Democratic victory here, which is scary. I don't like to look at these things and make those kind of hypotheses, but we know that under the Trump administration, it has not been doing very well with regards to solar. We know generally those are going to be more fossil fuel-based. Here's another one, which is ICLN. Now, my concern is here that a lot of people are going to try to jump on this, and I would caution you against that. I think that it's already moved up enough. I think that there might be some great buy points along the way. But this, again, going back to what Larry was talking about, to me is the media pushing this. You notice that CNBC's been pumping up the clean energy stuff. They've been pumping up alternative energy stocks, and it's certainly vaulted. I'd hate to see people, at least on this program anyway, caught holding the bag as this comes back down significantly. But in the long haul, it will probably continue to move up.
You know what's very fascinating, and I pointed this out to somebody yesterday. At the exact moment the SPX turned yesterday, I got an alert on my phone from CNBC saying the Dow has reached the record 400 a day. And I'm starting to see, what I'm starting to see, 400 points today, when those alerts come out is at the time the selling is happening. It's been pretty fascinating how the manipulation has really been going on.
Buy the rumor, sell the news?
Yeah. And it's just been interesting to see what's been going on in the markets lately.
Yeah, Tom says time to short clean energy. I don't know about shorting it. I just be really careful. I mean, that thing it's going to be very volatile. I think we'll continue to see some nice moves in that energy area.
And it could be, and who knows after the election if this is even going to be something to talk about. It might be.
Medic says, Trump is a fan of wind. Yeah, I forgot. I remember he said, nobody knows more than wind than me. Nobody knows more about wind than me. It's like, really? I think Mother Nature might have something to say about that. Just saying. All right. We got anything else?
We're going to show how the elections have worked over the last couple of years.
Oh, well, yeah. See, Larry, thanks for Larry for keeping the train on the tracks as we got derailed after our toilet paper debacle here in studio. Okay, so before you go to this, Gary, never mind, he went to it. I love this because I forgot who said it earlier, but somebody was like, I want the markets to go up, go Trump.
Right.
Very interesting that you say that. And I did this poll with you guys on my show a week or two ago. For those that might be joining us that weren't on that one, now you can bring this one up. The markets have actually historically performed better under a Democratic president. I know this is hard to believe. I actually thought it was Republican as well because you would think lower taxes mean markets boom. It's not true. The numbers speak for themselves, and this goes all the way back into the 50s, I believe. I think this actually goes 40s.
Back, Harry Truman.
It was before my time. I don't know Truman.
Late 40s, yeah.
It's interesting because, and we could all make arguments. What I don't want is here just people in the chat just going nuts, well, that's because they inherited this or inherited that. No. That's regardless is not a word, regardless of who inherited what. Under these administrations, these are the results that happen. Many people right now saying Trump's the greatest president ever. Look at the results. If you're looking for market performance, he is not. Okay, now, of course, Eisenhower had 2 terms, and he had 128% gain. Trump has 1, and this was taken, I took this like 2 weeks ago, I believe, maybe 3. It was at 49%. Actually, the best performing president, surprisingly, Mr. Saxophone in the Oval Office himself, Bill Clinton, 209%. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, and you got to remember that it was interesting because people inherit things. I mean, you had a kind of weaker economy around the time, Bush Sr. was in office. He was already starting to try to tackle that. I think Clinton inherited that. Same thing, Obama inherited a not so good one. But you know what's fascinating if you look at this kind of chart too? Since the 21st century, these elections have alternated. I didn't even see that before. Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump. And
it's flip-flop.
Yeah, so this could be the first time, and we really haven't had since Reagan and Bush in the late part of the 20th century that we've actually had presidents that back-to-back parties win.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty fascinating just looking at that chart. I never really looked at that. But yeah, I agree with you. And we were both very surprised because, a lot of this is, again, we're not talking about the economy per se. We're talking about the stock market performance.
Correct, yes.
So that's why some people will confuse and say, well, the economy's great. Well, understand that doesn't mean the markets are going to outperform maybe as the economy is going to perform. Usually the markets tend to trail. So we'll tend to see what's going on. And we've seen that because in the past, and the years, if I'm recalling correctly, were around 2000, and then we had 2007, and then we had now in August of 19 this inverted yield curve
right.
that went into the recession, that went into the crash. So we could be sitting out here right now, and this could be another thing that either Trump or Biden are going to inherit. Might be the next crash, and how they're going to handle that in a very different economy than when it was even when Obama handled the last crash.
We shall see. And for everybody that's wondering, it's very interesting why the Democrat president generally has stronger market. And I actually did a lot of research on this because I didn't want to believe 1 point data. The stats don't lie, obviously, when you look at that picture and can see, the actual numbers. I don't have the percentages here. I think it's like something like 4 versus 9% is the difference between Democrats or Republicans and Democrats with regards to market performance annually. But the reason why is this. you would think that because the Republicans are less taxes, we all have more money, therefore we would spend more and markets would be more robust. That's not exactly true. What it is the Democrats are taxing more, therefore there's more money for them to spend on infrastructure and projects. That in turn creates new jobs and growth. Those jobs will make the people who are working there more money, and we get this kind of growth machine, which is interesting. I never thought of that actually until about a month ago when I started really reviewing these facts and figures. But generally, it'll perform better under Democratic administration because of the spending that the government is doing. And yeah, I believe the last time we actually had a budget surplus was under Clinton.
It was. That is true. The budget surplus was Clinton. So this will be interesting times. You know, the best thing I'm hoping for is that everything goes smoothly tonight. We basically don't have to deal with a lot of rioting, a lot of problems. You know, we're already wounded. I'd like to see this country start healing. And it was fascinating because in the 1960s, I'll never forget this, I saw this ad, obviously not in the 60s, but afterwards, where it was at the end of the Lyndon B. Johnson election, and the gentleman was interviewed. He said, well, the election's over. It's time to rally behind our president. And I feel ever since the 21st century, we've never used the word "our" anymore. It seems to be this divide. And I'm hoping that one way or another, we can get back to that point where we all feel that it's one country again. We're not Republican, Democrat, we're Americans. And I think that this election has shown with more people coming out than ever, people are starting to see the importance of how keeping this country alive is dependent upon how we vote and how we use our voices.
It's a right to vote, and I agree. I think, we do have to back whoever is our president and hope that they'll lead us to the direction we want our country to go. If that doesn't happen, then we vote in 4 years. I think more important than who the leader of the country is, though, and who is, whether it's Democrat or Republican, is I hope that we get back to the point of personal and social values where I can look at someone who might be on the opposite side of the aisle from me and say, well, I like this, and I say, well, I'm not a fan of that. We can still remain friends as opposed to antagonistic and hostile, which nowadays, I think you'd all agree, you could say, I like the color green, and someone will turn around and go, well, F you, I don't like green, red's the color to be, so screw you. We're in that society right now, and I'm hoping we can back down a little bit and say, hey, you know what? You've been my friend for the last 15, 20 years. You might have the same viewpoints, but at the end of the day, we're all here on the same planet. Let's be friends and move forward.
Or I'm unfriending you.
Done. Delete me, Larry. Steal my headband. Go away, rock star. Get your own Duck Dynasty. All right, cool. I could do a whole bunch more stuff here. I wanted to keep going on, but make sure you guys go out there and vote. I know most of you have. If you feel like your vote doesn't matter, it does. Absolutely it does. There's initiatives on the ballot. Even if you think both of our candidates are absolute morons or the greatest people on earth, it doesn't matter. Go and vote for whoever you think might be the lesser evil of the two. All right, that's going to do it for today with regards to the president stuff. I will say this. Actually, are you got anything going on? Are you teaching somewhere? What are you doing?
No, I've been pretty much just kind of going ahead and doing Clubhouse.
Okay.
And so, we flash for a second on Clubhouse, and that's what I've been doing. We've been working on the new options class. You guys will be really happy with what we're coming up with. So for students here, we're going to hopefully have that out sooner than later. A lot more lab time. You're going to be working away and dealing with stuff. But what I I'm looking forward to is just a good 2021. I'm excited to see things getting back to normal as best as they can be. And I also want to say this has been our second election. Isn't that crazy? You and I were sitting at the same place 4 years ago with Hillary and the Donald.
It was and one of the questions that came up was, what do you do with the lock limit down if we get one tonight? Depending on what time that lock limit happens, in my opinion, will dictate some trades. Like if the market's closed and 2 hours after we get a lock limit down, I'm buying. And it's risky as hell. It's really risky because it could stay lock limited all night and then gap down even further, but I think it's usually an overreaction, a knee-jerk reaction. So we'll see. I've got some shorts on right now.
Procter & Gamble.
Tomorrow, guys, earnings-wise, you got Qualcomm, Baidu, Win, you have MetLife. Earnings, or economic-wise, you have ADP non-farm employment chain or non-farm payrolls tomorrow, crude oil inventories, and then it's services numbers coming out for the EU and the US for tomorrow. That stuff's going to be all over. I'm also going to have Lauren Newman on the show tomorrow talking options, so that will be our show. Again, if you like today's show, give me a little thumbs up down below the video. You can always leave your comments in there. Of course, make sure that you go vote. Drag your neighbors, drag your friends, get them down to local polling offices. I actually went to the physical building to do mine. I didn't trust mailing that damn thing in. So thank you guys so much for joining Larry and I today. Hope you have a great evening. Be peaceful, no rioting, stay home and watch reruns of Seinfeld. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.